Let's call this meeting to order at 7:02. Roll call, we do have 4 board members who will not be here tonight. Whitney Pierce, Sarah Holmstrom, Rich Bailey, and Mike D'Angelo. Other than that, the rest of the board is here. And we do have a few staff members with us also. Adoption of the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to make any adjustments, changes, additions, deletions? Larry, did you want to add something for policies?
Yeah, under new business, I want to introduce a set of suggested changes to out-of-date policies and procedures. I didn't expect anybody would be able to vote on them this week, so they're just being introduced for preparation and discussion and voting at the next meeting, but I would like to introduce them tonight.
Okay.
So put it new business or wherever you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, let's put that under new business, which would be 8B, the policy discussion. Anything else? Hearing nothing, I will say that the agenda has been adopted as amended. Announcements. Anything going on we should know about?
Oh, I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have an SGM the next weekend.
Okay, that would be a week from Saturday at 1 o'clock here in the dance
In
floor.
case somebody
Okay?
didn't know.
Yes, and after that SGM at what time is at 4 o'clock begins the first candidate forum. So that should be
Okay.
enjoyable.
Okay, Lee?
Yes. I want to announce that there was a resignation in N&E, and a call went out, and I believe the posting was made for a replacement, so we'll have a full cadre, and that, I believe, has been filled. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, moving on then to property owner comments. At this time, I would like to limit the property owner comments to 15 minutes. This is a board meeting. This is not a time for long speeches. And so we're looking at 7:04, make it 7:20 comments until that time. Thank you. First.
Andrew has the clock.
And Andrew does have the timer for 3 minutes. 3 minutes each. Member comments. Go. Yes.
Linda Bradley, 2782. I kind of hate to be making the statement that I'm going to make tonight, but there's been a discussion about the redraw board candidates that took place. And in reading the various governing documents, the original 5 candidates for the board submitted their applications as required. They've been penalized for following directions. Our bylaws state all candidate disclosure of interest statements for the annual election must be received and date stamped at the association's principal office by close of business day after Labor Day. The N&E manual preface states these practices and procedures that are the N&E manual are a guide to ensure that elections are conducted in a fair and impartial manner. These practices and procedures comply with the bylaws pertaining to the N&E and its functions, duties, and activities. Where there is a conflict, the bylaws control. In the instructions to candidates, it states, completed documents must be returned to the administration office in a sealed envelope addressed to the N&E chair by the closing date listed above. The time and date submission is received will be stamped on the sealed envelope. The N&E manual further in 4.15 reads, the deadline for submitting an application shall be the Tuesday after Labor Day by the close of business. The bylaws allow for no email applications. In the years I've participated in the N&E, no application has been overlooked or misplaced. Procedure is further defined in the instructions to the candidates to ensure information is not misplaced by requiring a sealed envelope and addressed to the N&E chair. To the end of the chair accepted an additional candidate Given that the application was not submitted according to the bylaws, it should have been rejected. The application was not sent to the administration office, it was sent to the chair. In actuality, the chair was not aware of the additional candidate until he contacted her after the other candidates had been selected and the information posted on the website. This whole process has done nothing to instill confidence in the community and only makes moving forward more difficult. The board as a whole has a commitment to adhere to the bylaws, not look for ways to work around what is in the bylaws. Even though the chair was made aware of the bylaws, she chose to move forward with her decision. A board member who has violated the restrictive covenants, bylaws, or rules and regulations, or who has failed to maintain membership in good standing may be removed from the board by a vote of a majority of the remaining board members. That's part of the bylaws too. While I doubt very much the board will take this action, Director Langdon should publicly apologize for this oversight and violation of the bylaws. What I'd really like you to do is to reinstate the original list, and if you have to add the added person, just put them at the end. But I don't know that that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments?
Joshua Bone, 17 Stable Lane. I left my horse feeding stick at home, but I wanted to say that, you know, if we're bending bylaws and changing them, I think the community needs to be aware of that ahead of time, and that should be released to the community. I think there is some transparency issues going on here. As far as my placement on there, I'm fine, but you know, it's from this SGM going to now this thing, it just seems like there's just so much crazy stuff happening every step of the way. There's typos, there's explanation stuff, there's this thing with the candidates, and it just, the lack of transparency seems overwhelming. And I think you guys need to do a better job at talking to the community about these things and releasing that information. My concern is if the bylaws are being bent or changed so quickly and abruptly, have there been other instances in the past that that kind of stuff has happened, and was everyone aware of that? That's my concern. So if there's a law, a bylaw for a certain thing, it seems like we need to adhere to those. Thank you.
Okay.
Steffi Jones, 15 Cascade Lane. No one can quite say things as eloquently as Linda Bradley, so I will say what she said. I also sent an email, and that is my formal complaint. I find I just have great difficulty with breaking bylaws, whether it makes sense or not, that we can't do that. And in my email, I stated that that only furthers the divide in the community, and that's a problem. I don't know. I'm really disappointed. So I think that the board should do something about this, and I'll look forward to my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? Okay, let me just briefly look here. I have the bylaw printed out also. All candidate disclosure of interest statements for the annual election must be received and date stamped at the association's principal office by close of business the day after Labor Day. And other opinions from the attorney, he hasn't spoken to this one, but in the past he has said something which is not prohibited can be allowed. And therefore, if now this is my opinion, if this is accepted, if this is sent to the board member, it goes through the server in the admin building, and it's automatically time-stamped when it goes through there, so we know when it was received. And I think this is what we are relying on at this point. Linda brought up the point that the entity handbook states that if something is not clear in the handbook, that the bylaws control, and so we have to come back and hang our hat on what the bylaw actually says. Are there other board members who would like to make comments? Andrew?
Can I just ask you?
I can't hear
Can I
you.
just ask a general question, I guess, back to the board?
Okay.
Microphone, please.
In terms of process, why, I guess I'm just having a hard time understanding. I think David dropped out, can't recall his last name, but David dropped out. Why
Right.
wouldn't we just replace David with the new person, rather than going through the whole process again?
That
Of
comes
redrawing.
down to a fairness issue, and we actually addressed that, was that 1 or 2 years ago? I don't remember exactly when it was, when there was an issue with the drawing, and the answer was redraw. And if this person had his name had been brought forward in the beginning, he would have been in the box with everybody else, and who knows where he would have wound up. So to just automatically place him somewhere, it's a fairness issue. And it's unfair to everybody. You're right. We should have looked at this along with all of the rest of the applications and dealt with it right then. Unfortunately, it was overlooked, and we have to deal with it now. Anybody else? Lee?
Yes. I just want to say that one of the things that I'm involved in, have been for many years, is continuous improvement and continuous improvement of processes. And this particular process needs some attention. There are several others that are part of being in NNE, and I am committed, based on the brouhaha that I have created, because I didn't open the email. I overlooked the email. If I hadn't done that, nobody would know that there was an electronic submission. I would have printed it off, it would have been mine, it would have been brought in, and the whole thing would be moot. I admitted my error to the community for overlooking it. I tried to come up with a redraw solution because, frankly, why would I want to have to admit to the entire community that I had made a mistake and that we would all have to do the redraw? I could not come up with a win-win solution except for doing the redraw. So I have admitted my error. I was out of compliance with the bylaws. The bylaws, I believe there are various ways of looking at it, but my decision was made to give the person who had asked in good faith how he could apply for a board position when he was out of town. He was informed to go to the Sudden Valley website and there download the application. That's an electronic application that he used. He was also told to send it to me. He was not, the reason that the envelopes are supposed to be addressed to me and me being the NNE chair, and the applications inserted in the envelope, is so that administration is not involved in anything having to do with the application. So when he was informed of what to do with his electronic application, he sent it directly to me. I have apologized, I've explained, I have answered questions, and I am going to stand by my decision, regardless of the email that is directed to me. And if I'm editing out a line or two, I'm going to stand by my position that this person was acting in good faith, and I responded in good faith, and this person should be here. I want to say two other things. One, I would have done it for anybody who came across that way, okay? I would not do it for anybody who just sent me an email, but somebody who had gone through the process in good faith. Secondly, I have no idea who that person is, nor have I known any of the 3 candidates who have spoken or the other 2 or 3 that are on the list. I maintained my neutrality as best I could as a member of the community, and I committed to everybody I could that I was not going to engage in social media. I have not opened any of it. So I don't know that there's anything else to say. Some people are asking for my resignation. I think that's way bigger than this error requires. And frankly, I would love to resign. My husband would love me to resign. But we're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I will not be bullied. I took a stand. I keep that stand. And I wish everybody who's running to do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of those? Eric?
I have a quick question of staff, if I may. Is staff aware of any time in the past that an electronic submission has been allowed in past elections? Any knowledge of that?
It was my impression that that was allowed. Evidently, I'm mistaken on that, because all of the bios and the mission statements are received electronically. The photographs are received electronically, and I don't see the applications that come into the office. They just go straight from the window or the mail into the box. And so it was my impression, it was my understanding, my belief that that was something that, because I do know for a fact that some ballots have been received electronically. There was a gentleman that lived overseas who requested to vote and sent, so his, a blue envelope was emailed to him, he filled it out, he scanned it, sent it back. It was put on the outside of another blue envelope and somebody voted the ballot for him. So that was all done electronically. And so because of that happening 2 years in a row, it was my impression that that was something that had been allowed.
Was that something that NNE knew about?
Oh, yes. Yes, it was the NNE chair that allowed that. And because just in assistance to someone, and I'm sorry that that person was not known to the NNE chair, it was a way to make sure that people that wanted to vote could vote.
Okay, so a past NNE chair.
Past NNE chair. Mhm.
Thank you.
Carol, and then Larry.
Carol was first, yeah.
And then me after you.
Having been on NNE for a year and a half, I know there are things that sometimes happen because a decision is made or whatever, but I think it's really important for the membership to understand that NNE must work independently. The board may not recommend or coerce or direct the NNE chair to do anything in any way. The whole idea is to keep neutrality and any board pressure off of any candidate or anyone working in NNE. So I believe that Lee has worked in good faith. I appreciate her tough decision, and I, as a board member, would not take any action to change it for fear that that would also make us look like we were trying to control the election, which a board cannot do.
Larry?
I'd like to point out that much has been made of the language of the bylaws. So there is in the bylaws, in Article 6, Section 3, regarding notifications. And I'll read. Notices, et cetera, shall be in writing, using that word, writing, and then shall be deemed to have been duly given, skip down to section B2, sent by, if it'll be duly given, if sent by electronic mail as specified by the RCWs. There's two places, 2403.009, 6438.035.2C. And subparagraph 2 is if to the association, the board, or the managing agent at the at the association's principal office or such other electronic mail address. So it's not at all obvious that a physical writing is in fact the only permitted method. In fact, it's, in my opinion, rather clear that an electronic delivery is specifically and explicitly permitted under the bylaws and has been for several years. Not to mention permitted under the RCWs.
Okay. Anything else?
If I may.
Okay, Lee,
One,
briefly.
just briefly. One, addressing the question of electronic ballots. I have an email from someone who was the chair of Entity in 2010, and she describes receiving electronic ballots, same process that Lisa was discussing. Second thing is, I want to make clear that the mistake I made was that I didn't open that email. I missed it. That's, the bylaw issue is a separate issue as far as I'm concerned, and having been on Entity earlier and the logic of using electronic mail and so on is why it didn't even occur to me to worry about it. I worried about it because I didn't open it, just so that that's clear.
Okay. Eric?
One more brief thought is, I believe that it was mentioned the reason, one of the many reasons for holding a second drawing was that there was a potential complaint about having had the first drawing without a quorum of Entity, which, if with that complaint, invalidated that entire meeting. In fact, it made it such that the meeting never happened, meaning that the first drawing never happened.
Okay. Okay, let's move on now to business of the meeting. The first thing is the approval of the consent agenda. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of minutes there. Carol?
I'd like to move that we approve all of the minutes in the consent agenda.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll cast a unanimous ballot for, to approve all of the minutes. Continuing business and voting is necessary. There is none. New business and voting is necessary. The Parks Master Plan. Maddie, are you going to give us something tonight?
I am.
Thank you.
All right, so the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Committee has been going around to each of our parks and actually documenting their current state that they're in. So that's what they've been doing pretty much all summer. So we put together this, it's a draft version right now, Parks Master Plan. And in there, it gives a list of all of the parks within the community, and it gives general recommendations for the parks, if we want to improve them, if we want to keep them in their current state, you know, if they're worth keeping. They've also categorized a lot of the parks, if they're developed, like they have infrastructure, if they're natural, what type of park they are, if they're like an open space or a neighborhood park or a regional park. And it gives recommendations for maintenance levels as well, which really helps staff.
Okay.
But really what we were hoping to do is just capture how the parks look in this summer and go from there. And it's really for the board. It gives recommendations for you guys, and hopefully you'll keep this in mind when we go forward with SURF. I think that's coming up here pretty soon, those priorities for next year. And
I noticed that on the packet that was given to the board, there was a second page showing issues and recommended improvements for each one of them, which I don't believe was on the online packet.
Yeah,
And this
we
is
don't
going
wanna-
forward? Yeah. What you would like to see in the future. This is not for a decision tonight, right?
this is really just informational only, just
Thank you.
for decisions that you may make in the future. We just wanted to show you the committee's been working really hard, and this is the product of their work. But we're really excited about being able to post this online, because some of these parks are really hidden. So we've done worked really hard to give like proper descriptions and directions to each of the parks, and actually say, hey, you can park here. Because some of them, it's really not clear where they are. That was really the point. And most of the Most of the stuff that you want to pay attention to is in the very back, because it just talks about general recommendations for the parks in general, like when we have the opportunity, create a few parking spaces. They found it's really hard to try and find a parking space next to most of our parks since they're neighborhood parks. And they recommended new signage. A lot of our signage is mismatched or old or you can't read it, so creating a signage plan so it's really clear, yes, this is a Sudden Valley Park that we maintain.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to commend the committee for the level of work that went into this. It was, I'm glad to hear that is it currently online or going online?
We were hoping to get the okay to put it online from you guys.
As somebody that, when I was looking to move here, this would have been wonderful to see. As a resident, I really enjoyed, I enjoyed going through this board meeting packet.
We don't always do that.
No. But the level of detail and the quality of work that came out of the committee is just really impressive, and I'd love for them to just know that and how appreciated it is. It's really great.
Thank you.
Yes. Joe?
I have a question to the board. Do we have a set of standard color, standard signage that has been adopted by the board?
Not to my memory.
In all the years that I can remember having been involved. All I know is what the signs that you see
Correct.
that have been there forever and ever. Blue, if I remember.
I'm going to task Parks and Recs. I think we should come up with a set of standard signs, standard colors, standard lettering.
Branding plan.
Agreed.
Okay.
We can do that. I might actually have something from a previous job that's already just ready to use. So that works great.
Andrew, did I see your hand up?
Well, yes, Paula, I always enjoy reading the board member packet. But no, kudos to the committee. Thanks. This is very comprehensive. I just wanted to echo the accolades already mentioned, and I really appreciate the recommended improvements portion that I'm seeing on these. So, good job.
Thank you.
Carol?
So Maddie seemed to be asking for permission to post this online. I don't think we need to vote on it. I mean, it's information, get it out there. It's great. Great job.
Completed staff work. Done.
Yes. We also wanted to just point out, we are working on the parks that you guys approved funding for. We're working on Gate 5 right now. They're being super sports about working in this weather, and they've just excavated a lot of that old material out, so they're getting ready to put the landscape fabric down and put the playground borders in, and then they'll do the pea gravel, and then they're working on removing some stumps that were left there and then reseed it, so there's actually going to be a lot more play area after we're done.
Okay. Carol?
As I was reading about Gate 5 Park, I thought, wasn't this always called Tumbling Water Park? And you had said in there, we're hoping to change it to Tumbling Water Park. I thought it was already.
I thought it was
So
too. There was no...
Apparently it was on a map as Gate 5 Park and never officially got changed on any documents. So I don't know what the procedure is for naming parks, but if that's a recommendation you have, I would so move.
I think if you go back in the minutes, you will find that...
I think you will.
Yeah, that name was given to it, but...
Oh, really?
Andrew?
Well, that'd be kind of a fun thing to send out to the community to have them
Make it a
vote on
contest.
a name for the park.
Why not?
Interesting.
Parky McParkface?
No,
Just tonight.
just a question, if I may. Which park are we referring to in Gate 5? There are two that I understand. There's one where the playground equipment is located.
That's it.
Right.
There is another one, apparently, because I recall having read from very, very, very early days that there is a park and trail, et cetera, along a creek near a waterfall, which is why it's called Tumbling Water. At least that's my understanding, and that is not the same as where the playground equipment is. So I had always thought Tumbling Water Park is where,
Where the
what is the
bridge is.
first right turn when you get into Gate 5, the
Where
first
the
right?
bridge is. Yeah.
Okay, there's a bridge over
Yeah.
a creek,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's supposedly back up in
There is
that.
there is a trail that goes up that stream, but I
And
don't
my-
know, I've never walked it, so I don't know what's up there.
Neither have I, but that's my understanding, that that's the remains of the original Tumbling Water Park.
Okay.
I have some information. If you can imagine walking up that waterfall next to it, and you go up to the southeast, when you get to the top of the hill there is a park. It has a picnic bench.
Oh,
Wow. If you go up Clematis, I believe, it dead ends, and it's right at the dead end there. And so there is some evidence of where a trail used to be. There used to be a trail that got washed out years ago.
Anybody in Gate 5 can help us?
When the mountain came down, it took that walkway, the tumbling water bridge out there, the whole 9 yards.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, but there is a
Yeah.
table up there.
Okay.
More stuff to work with.
We will look for that area, but this was based on the official parks map, so
No,
that's interesting.
Today's park map. Yeah, yeah.
That'd be cool to create a trail or a waterfall, so.
And I know that Carol Trower, when she was on the committee, and Karen Borchert continues to try to work with past members of the Parks Committee who has all of the old plans. And he just can't find them right now because he moved a couple of times. So,
All right.
Okay.
Speaking of old plans, remember, we have a blue box that has tons of old stuff. So if you can't find it, there's a spreadsheet that lists what box number documents are in, and as best as could be done by volunteers, a description of each document. And so you might be able to locate, I'm almost certain you'll be able to locate the original parks map, because my recollection is that was one of the documents that we put into the blue bin. It was a big map.
Big
Yeah.
map, a big
Yeah.
booklet.
Yeah, I've seen from the 70s, I think, like the original one, somebody had them, and they're just not very accurate representations of the parks, to be honest, because they're conceptualized plans, like Beaver Ridge Park, it called for like a clubhouse and a pool and all of these other things, and it's like not even
Projected
close
thing,
to
yeah,
how the parks
right.
actually are.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point of doing this new plan. At least we get a baseline for what's actually out there right now.
That's good.
Okay, thank you very much. And yes, do post this.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the policies. And Larry, you have handed out this set of documents.
Right. With Madam Chair's permission, I'd like to mention something that the board was expecting to get to, but we were waiting for a decision and advice from our attorney. This regards proposed bylaw amendments D1 and D2 that were proposed to conform our replacement policies in the bylaw and our removal of director policy in the bylaw to state law. But our attorney has informed us that we do not need to do that.
Okay.
Based on another section in state law. So the two D bylaw proposals are withdrawn. They're just not necessary at all.
Thank you.
So what has been voted on before is all that there is.
Okay. So the
That was
bylaws
that was
have
A,
been-
B, C, and E.
Okay, they have been approved, and therefore they will be submitted on the ballot.
And I'll be working with Lisa and N&E to get them in a proper format so that they can be published.
Okay, good.
A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C,
D.
Not D.
D, A, B, C, E.
That's what I said. I think that's what I said.
No, you did, I was just clarifying, thank you.
Yeah, because D had two parts, D1 and D2,
Right.
so both of those are gone. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about at the last DRC meeting, but nobody showed, so I went ahead and took a look at it, was old and outdated policies, and I've given you a list. Went through the website and just copied all of the policies older than about 2011. Because those later ones, we've already looked at, they're relatively reasonable, et cetera, et cetera. These, however, are pretty clearly outdated. The reason that the top page, 1 of 8, says, has golf there in 2 places. We've got golf rules and regs, which includes a dress code. And then there are bunches of golf policies. It was my understanding that in 2017, the board deleted these, voted to delete all the golf policies, but they're still on the website. So I wanted to bring it up again to make sure, and then add all of the rest that should be included. So this time, let's get it done.
Yeah. Okay.
These golf things, I mean, basically the only policy, I don't mind the rules and regs except the specificity of what the dress code is. Basically, the dress code, it says right up at the top, final decision in determining dress code compliance lays with the golf profession and their staff. Well, that's the way it should be. There should be
All
no.
of this is operational.
Yeah, this is all operational. The other paragraphs, the 512.3 and 512.4, probably can stay. 4, I think, sounds really ominous. Trespassing is not permitted, and it's not clear from that they're really only talking about when golfers are playing. You don't want other people on the course. 2 types of other people. Folks walking their kids on the golf path, and also folks trying to steal golf. So I suggest a wording that makes it more clear that use of the golf area outside of golf time is perfectly appropriate. There's no problem with that. Okay, so I encourage everyone to go online, take a look at what these are. They're all in the member resources section under policies and procedures. Here's the title, there's the number, and I've gone through and said what I think about those things, see what you think about those things, and then we can come and discuss them at the next board meeting. Most of these are simply outdated and should be deleted. A very few, I'm not particularly in accounting and ACC, I'm not expert enough to make that kind of a decision. I suggest that the accounting staff and finance committee take a look at those things. Some of the things with regard to investments, for instance, I believe we've already got a replacement policy, but yet the older policy is still on the website for some reason. So I won't spend a lot more time on it, just say I hope everybody takes the time to look at these. I think once we come back at the next meeting, it should be a fairly short discussion.
Yeah, it would be a good thing if we bring these back to the next meeting, if each one of the areas of interest, finance, ACC, et cetera, be prepared to make motions to remove the ones that they think are outdated.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm
At our
certainly,
next meeting,
yeah,
I'll see what I can do, but I think finance will be a little busy. between
yeah.
now and
Finance
I
may be busy.
am not
Okay.
suggesting that finance or ACC or folks like that should be ready to pull them out, but certainly the ones that are outdated we can pull, and the ones that I need some assistance with, you now know which ones those are.
Okay.
And you just read through the list, and those people with the expertise need to take a look, and we'll work on it as we work on it.
Okay. Okay, sounds fine. Okay, that is the end of the business. We now have property owner comments.
Linda Bradley, 2782, and I have a question of everybody rather than a comment. I was looking at the latest audit that was done. I have a couple of questions, and I want to know if I need to submit a formal information request and do it that way, send it to Carol. I know that probably I'm going to have to wait until, I don't know if I have to wait until Joel gets here. It's just, one of them has to do with the lots that are, that it says we have, that we're holding for sale. It's stated in the audit that we had 35 lots still available for sale at the end of 2018. And the other one has to do with financials, and I'd have to send more description.
Okay, Joe, how would you like to handle that?
Just send us a formal information request, and we'll get you the information. That'll be
Sounds
probably,
like a
that's the
plan.
easiest way, Linda, that's probably the easiest way to take care of that.
It's, you know, that's what I wanted to know, because it's not really anything you have, it's something you will forward on and ask the auditor, I assume. Thanks.
Okay. Other board, yeah, member comments? Nothing? Something?
Fred Haslam, 2394. Be very brief. I'm serving on the entity committee, and it's been an honor and a privilege to work with Lee. Many of you are unaware of the amount of work that goes on processing applications, so on and so forth, and I'm learning what's involved. So I see Lee as a person of great integrity. Like I say, it's been a privilege to work with her. I think it's important we look at purpose in addition to process. Sometimes process is trumping purpose, and I think all of the to-do about what has occurred exemplifies that. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Joshua Bowen, 17 Stable Lane. I wanted to go back to the electronic submissions. You know, on the instructions it says sealed envelope, et cetera, if someone's emailing you guys or, you know, I mean, the chances of something going to spam is highly likely if you haven't, you know, worked with these people before. So if you guys are going to make changes to say that officially we can submit stuff electronically, I can do it from home in my pajamas or whatever, you have to have that on the site and you have to have a submission form. You can't do it by email. It's not safe, and I think that's something you guys should consider moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steffi Jones, 15 Cascade Lane. If we look at the purpose of submitting applications in the manner in person in an envelope, perhaps it's to avoid something like this. So we have to look at the process that going the other way led us to. And my whole problem is that if you offer that to one person, you should offer that to everyone, and no one else was made aware. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Board comments?
Lee?
Yes, Lee.
Okay. Starting at the end, anyone who asked would have been told the same thing. And those of you who were in residence were able easily to comply. Someone from away was not able and asked. Secondly, I think Joshua's comment is very, very purposeful, and we will indeed develop a set of procedures, providing alternative ways, you know, and they will be clear, and we will test them, and it's possible that there will still be a glitch or two, which always happens. There's a third thing, Joshua, that you said at the end of your first set of comments, which was about so much craziness going on. And one of the pieces occurred when the Valley Views came out, and above the article that I wrote that gave the date of the SGM, the headline gave a different date. Okay? And I didn't write the headline. I received an apology from the editor who did write the headline and had made a mistake. Frankly, for those of you who are full of reasons that we're trying to cause trouble with the election, I have to tell you that if I wanted to confuse the populace, I would have said September 22nd. As it is, it's the day before the election. They can come, oh, it's not today, the AGM is, or the SGM isn't today. However, if I had posted the 22nd, people could have arrived on Sunday after the election was over. So these are mistakes. I'm running to catch up. And so life is life and all of those things. I don't have another cliche. Oh, but it's time for me to be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make one comment. It's time to start thinking about the end of the year and the things that we need to be doing. We'll have one more meeting in September, 2 in October. We need to start thinking about when do we want to have the new board orientation, when do we want to have the organizational meeting following the AGM, et cetera, and committees, et cetera. There's just a whole lot of things to start thinking about, and we can bring those up at the next 2 meetings, actually. Okay, anything else? Would you like to make a motion?
I move that the board recess into closed session for legal issues.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, hearing no objection, we will now go into closed session. Thank you.
Do I need to be there? Yes.
And it is at 7:48 that we are going to adjourn into closed session.
I have no idea.